me for my voice, but I have never seen anything like it.
Do you believe in miracles? Yes! Unbelievable.
Hi, welcome to the podcast. This is more of a somber one. It's going to kind of direct where this podcast is going to go in the future, what you can expect out of this podcast in the next couple months, next couple weeks, next couple days. So if you haven't listened to the podcast before, if you've missed the Alexander Haynes interviews that we've done since January, you've missed out on a lot of coronavirus talk. We've been talking about it since January. We really had been trying to harp the issue to the listeners, to you guys, that this was serious. He was telling us that it was rampant in China and how China hadn't really figured it out. They weren't figuring out how to solve the coronavirus issue in their country of origin of this virus, and how that if it got to the United States, it was going to not only be catastrophic for the citizens here, but catastrophic for just sports and just life in general, and how that if this really took root in the United States, this could be a rough couple months, rough year, in fact. And it happened. Wednesday night, the NBA season was put on hold. Following couple days, the baseball season was put on hold. March Madness was canceled. All the conference tournaments were canceled. So we're going to talk a little bit about where this podcast is going to go forward. But first, I kind of want to talk about the conference championship games getting canceled, because it directly affected me. I was planning on going to New Orleans on Friday. We were going to drive from San Marcos, the city that I record out of. We were going to go from San Marcos to New Orleans on Friday. Saturday was going to be the conference tournament for the Sun Belt. Sunday was the championship game. We were going to drive back Sunday afternoon. And the waking up on Friday morning, I was 60-40 that I didn't want to go. We'd already seen that Tom Hanks had gotten the coronavirus in Australia. We'd already seen that the NBA season was on hiatus. I had a feeling that college basketball was going to be very much affected by this, that March Madness was potentially going to be canceled. So waking up Friday morning, I was 60-40 that I wasn't going to go. The Sun Belt sent out an email, sent out a press release like a lot of conferences did. It was essential personnel, players, coaches, media members, and that was it. No fans, no extra people, maybe a handful of family members, but for the most part, it was going to be very tight ship in NOLA. And I had made the decision that at that point, I wasn't going to risk it. I have older parents. I have a grandparent. I didn't want to risk getting infected, being asymptomatic, coming back home, and accidentally getting the virus spread to San Marcos or my loved ones, right? So I said, I don't think I was going to go. I told the group of people I was with, I don't think we should go. They agreed with me, so we weren't going to go to NOLA. Shortly afterwards, the Sun Belt Conference canceled the tournament. Shortly after that, college basketball was canceled. And in a league, in a year, in a time where content is king, where you need to put something out every day, where you need to continually have something to put on your website, continually have something to put on your podcast, the lack of sports is deafening. You see guys like ESPN with SportsCenter, they're struggling right now. They've decided that they're going to run SportsCenter 24/7 and just do coronavirus updates, do updates on the pro draft picks that are working out by themselves. They're going to do updates on how NBA players are feeling. I get it. It makes sense. I don't know if there's a ton of viewership there. I don't know if there's a ton of stuff to watch with that. But that's where they decided to go with it. Fox Sports canceled all their studio shows. They're not going to have Lock It In, Undisputed, all those shows. First Things First, those shows are canceled. They're not going to have those. Everybody's pretty much been quarantined or self-quarantined at this point. Businesses are shutting down. Post offices, it's going to be pretty soon before the post office stops running, I assume, just because we don't know how this virus can spread from mail. We could see that the mail service stop pretty soon. And you can go to other podcasts if you want to talk about the mass hysteria with the toilet paper. You can go to other podcasts about the conspiracy theories with this coronavirus. You can go to other podcasts to tell you how to wash your hands. We did that earlier this week. We're not going to do it again. But I just wanted to focus on the sports part of this because not since and I was thinking about this for the longest time, not since 9/11, Alexander, I think, had it right on Thursday, not since 9/11 has there been a time that sports has stopped. That the entire sports world, from amateur to professional, from America to Europe to Asia to Africa, there's not a single professional league playing right now that I know of. Maybe there's a minor league cricket team that's playing, but for the most part, all professional sports in the Western Hemisphere have ceased to continue. Everything has stopped. There is no more professional basketball. The XFL has suspended play. NCAA has stopped. So what does that do for us on this podcast? Because I think that's really where it comes down to. A very talented, a very well-known guy in the radio industry made a point recently, and he said that if you are a sports talk radio host, if you're a podcast host, and the lack of sports stops your show, then you weren't a very good host. And I stand by that. I agree with that take. Jason Barrett said that. If you are a podcast host like myself, and you're not able to fill your content window, which, to be completely honest with you, is pretty easy to fill for this podcast, you're not doing a good enough job. There's plenty of stuff for us to talk about, guys. There's plenty of interviews for us to do. There's plenty of just wacky ideas to come up with. And I hope that you guys in self-quarantine, I hope that you guys who are still working potentially, they're still going to work if your offices are open, continue to listen to our podcast, because I think we're going to have a lot of fun stuff in the next couple days. Now, the other big elephant in the room is that if you noticed, the NL East preview didn't get loaded today, because the baseball season has been pushed back. We don't know how far. We don't know when the season will begin. The idea is that there's a potential for a 30-day hiatus. There's a potential for a month hiatus, 2 months hiatus, where the season won't start. The recent projections are that June will be the time that we really end this epidemic. That June will be the time where everybody is either immune to the disease because they've already had it, or we'll have a vaccine for it. But June is really the date that we think that everything is going to wrap up around the COVID-19, around the coronavirus. That said, the season was supposed to start in a couple weeks. Our plan on this end of the spectrum was that we were going to have a divisional preview every week, 2 times a week leading up to it. And the plan was that Monday of opening day week, we were going to have a big baseball podcast. We were going to potentially have a guest on to really give us their thoughts of the season. It was going to be a real big to-do that Monday that starts the season. But instead, what we're going to do, because I think that it's only right, because we're halfway through, we did all the American League, we're going to continue with the National League. What we're going to do is we're going to continue with the podcast starting on Monday. The NL East podcast will go up Monday, and what we're going to continue to do is we're going to have the coronavirus updates. We're going to have the coronavirus updates on the different leagues on podcasts. So as the virus continues to run around the country, as we still are trying to figure out if basketball is going to come back in the next 30 days, if it's going to come back in the next 60 days, what the plan is for the NBA, we're going to continue to give updates on the podcast as that time goes on. So that is the plan on our end. Look, of all the leagues, baseball I think is set up the best because everybody has been wanting a shorter season. It's not a secret that the only people who like the 162 game schedule I think would be the regional broadcast networks, who get 6 to 7 hours of content between the pregame and postgame and show, the actual game. They get like 6 hours to 7 hours of content out of that every week, at least once a day for a week. So you're looking at of a week that you have 24 hours to fill, filling up anywhere between 60 and 70 of those hours. Not a terrible idea. So the facts are that baseball, I think, set up the best. That they pushed the season back. Maybe we get the October Classic. Maybe we get the World Series in early November instead of early October. Maybe we get the playoffs starting in October and ending up early in December. The plan is, I think, for the NFL, I think the NFL thinks that they aren't going to be affected by this. I beg to differ. The first NFL player that gets the virus, it's going to be a big, big, big deal. Basketball is the most interesting one to me because the idea that the league should be pushed back to December 25th should be opening day. That's really the time that most fans tune into the NBA, and then the season would continue through August, has been kicked around for the past 4 or 5 years. And now you potentially get the chance to get basketball in June, July, and August. So this could be the time that basketball really figures itself out. Look, this is going to change professional amateur sports forever. I don't think anything will ever be the same after this. Between the advertising dollars the NCAA makes off of March Madness, the difference in the players' salaries going forward in the NBA, where the cap is determined by how much money is brought in the year before, between the $3 billion potentially lost in China this beginning of the season with the Daryl Morey tweet, to now losing upwards of $1 billion thanks to the lost revenue of the missing playoffs and NBA Finals. This is going to be a tone shift for the NBA. You're going to have a lot of very interesting contracts going forward. Guys that are going to be on vet min salaries who 2 years removed from being all-stars. If you're a free agent this summer, boy, if you don't have a good agent, you're in bad luck, because it's going to be a negotiation to get every single penny of your contract. It's going to be rough. So, that sports has been the release, I think, for this country for over 100 years. Without sports, it's going to be rough. But I'm already looking at, okay, I love to watch old sporting events. I've already have a playlist on YouTube right now of old sporting events that I have found that we're going to watch. We're going to break down. I'm ordering a second microphone, so I'm going to have my self-quarantine, and we're going to bring in a guest who really likes sports as well, and we're going to kind of break down some of these old-timey games. We're going to break down some of the greatest games of all time. And the plan is to get some of the all-time great players to come on the podcast as well, to kind of potentially, if not great players that played in great games, to kind of talk about what they saw from their point of view, how the league has changed since this game, what this turning point meant, all different types of stuff. So this podcast has a lot of room to grow. We are very excited moving forward. I am very excited with the content that we're going to be able to put out, and I can hope and pray that you guys stay safe. I can hope and pray that you guys will continue to listen to our podcast. If everybody's in quarantine, everybody's reading books and watching movies, this would be a good time to check out a podcast, and I very, very, very much would love you guys to recommend our podcast to your quarantined friends. So, from me to you, please wash your hands, but more importantly, please be safe. Please treat each other with respect. Please do not hoard toilet paper, okay? And please continue to listen to the podcast, because I think there's going to be a lot of fun content. Even though sports aren't happening, there's a lot of other stuff happening in the world. And I hope that you will join me on the ride as we talk about it every single day, Monday through Friday. At least once you're going to get a podcast from me. And I can promise you that. I'll talk to you guys on Monday.